Welcome to the Ohio STEM School Designation process. This is the first webinar, and we go through the entire process from here to middle winter, which it feels like it's middle winter already, but into early spring. I speak for both Stephanie and Heather Sherman when I say welcome, and we're kind of excited that there is up to about 60 people participating on this webinar. Every year we keep thinking to ourselves, this is going to stop. This is going to end where there's not that much interest in the STEM designation, but it does, and it continues. There's a couple little changes this year, which is a little bit different, but let's go through the process. Just so you know, Battelle manages the Ohio STEM Learning Network through our venture within STEM. We are Battelle Education. We're kind of a subsidiary of Battelle Memorial Institute. What does OSLN do? We like to think of ourselves as the connecting fiber throughout the state of Ohio. We put schools together, we put educators together, and it doesn't say it, but we try to put administrators together as well, and even communities and businesses and post-secondary institutions. The thing here is that it takes a village to create a STEM school. You cannot work in isolation and create a high-quality STEM school. You have to have partners that look like STEM businesses, that look like post-secondary institutions. What we're really trying to do is drive STEM innovation in the state of Ohio, meaning if we find something really great that's going on in Cleveland, can we transfer that to what's happening in Cincinnati and across the state? That's what the network does. The map, the Ohio map shows you where our schools that have been currently designated and hubs are. They are, if you look at it from a highway point of view, we kind of follow I-75 and I-71. We are mostly in the urban areas with some rural exceptions, and we're very pleased to start adding more rural schools as we go.
Yep, so add that we have 7 hubs, and you can see Toledo at Bowling Green State, University, Cleveland at Cleveland State, Akron and Akron Public Schools. This Ohio hub is housed right now at the Metro School. The Dayton Regional Hub is housed at Wright State. The Southwest Ohio hub is housed at the University of Cincinnati, and the Southeast hub is housed at Shawnee State University. As I said, the hubs are really, like, we look to them to be regional experts in STEM, and that we like for them to know all of the STEM things that are going on in their region, as well as across the state. All hub coordinators get there. We have a call with them bi-weekly so they can learn about what everyone is doing to best support all of our schools and wannabe STEM schools in the state.
Just on to that piece, through the designation process, the people who reside in those hubs and the administrators and even teachers within the schools, those are the people who review the applications. Those are the people that we send out for technical assistance. Yep,
so for anybody who wants to a pre-review of the application, and we'll talk about it later, Battelle offers that service.
We've had explosive growth of the STEM schools throughout the state of Ohio, really with one here in Columbus, but the original 5 go up the I-71-75 corridor, all in the big urban areas, but now it's really spreading throughout the state of Ohio. So the actual impact, when I was talking to people like the Department of Education, it was embarrassing 10 years ago. They'd say, how many kids do you have? And we'd say 12. The truth is that the numbers are getting pretty impressive at this point.
We did a little internal study in the spring just to spot how well our schools are doing, and you'll see the results on the screen. And and we'll put together a report. If you haven't seen that, it's on our website, and or Rob will mail it to you if you ask for it. Yep, so we have, as David said, there has not been a ton of work or a ton of research on our schools because we've exploded so quickly. We know that SRI and George Washington University have been looking at inclusive STEM schools for a number of years. One of our schools was part of this study, but we use this study across the country and everywhere we go, basically to sort why it's great to have inclusive STEM schools and what happens in those schools and why those are the types of schools we want to see in the future to make sure that our kids are college and career ready. So, do you want to?
Sure. This is part of the Ohio Department of Education. And
Holly?
Yep. Holly should be live.
Can you hear me?
we can. So I'd like to announce it's the director of the STEM Innovation Group at the Department of Education, Holly Lavender.
Sorry about that. I was having some technology issues. This is Holly Lavender. As David said, I am the STEM education lead. This is part of the Office of Innovation at the Ohio Department of Education. And we provide administrative support for the STEM committee and the designation process. And we help to facilitate all applications where you submit them, getting them to OSLN and to the committee and so forth, and making all of that happen. We also are involved in interpreting any of the state laws surrounding designated STEM schools. One thing that I would strongly recommend that you do if you are interested in being designated is take the time to read through the Ohio Revised Code Chapter 3326. Is the law that talks about STEM designated schools, and you need to be aware of what's there. So a lot of what I do is questions that might come up regarding STEM designated schools. We usually look at that chapter first. And any policies related to STEM designation, usually we're involved in that in some way. David, are you able to hear me okay on your end? Is there anything that I might need to say?
No, it's coming very clearly. Thank you.
Okay. And you want to talk about the STEM committee, or I can talk about them?
Why don't you go ahead on the committee?
The STEM committee is actually defined in statutes in that Chapter 3326. Every now and then I get an email or a phone call from somebody asking if they can be on the STEM committee. Well, if to be able to do that, you either need to be the superintendent of public instruction or chancellor with the Department of Higher Ed, the director of development for the state of Ohio, or one of two appointees that are appointed by either the governor, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, or the president of the Senate. Those people are defined in law, and so that is who is in the STEM committee. Now we have a couple of vacancies. So, governor's office, we've got a couple of vacancies for the governor's appointees. So that's something that you possibly do if you want to be on the committee. But that's who that is. And they will be the people that are reviewing your application.
Notion around the committee, they are not just a rubber stamp organization. They are actually, I've been impressed over the last 10 years of doing this of how committed they are to STEM education, how deeply they read the applications, and how difficult they are to ensure that there's high quality STEM throughout the state of Ohio.
I agree.
Gets into this year's little bit difference of application process. There's now, through a revised code, also the availability to apply as a STEAM school. Obviously, adding the arts, there are two major differences in the application process. one in the regular or in the typical STEM application, the partnerships are based. In the STEAM application, an arts organization must be listed as one of the partners. Second, the factor is in curriculum. The STEAM application absolutely insists that you have arts expertise within the curriculum group that's designing the curriculum.
Can you chime in something on that? They are looking for, it specifically says in statute that it's people with expertise in arts integration. So that's something that you might want to think about is what does that mean? And we can talk more about that.
I mean, the frequent questions, what's the difference between STEM and STEAM? From OSLN's viewpoint, we're completely agnostic on this. The STEM school that we work with, there is a very, very strong arts component already involved. And to be honest with you, we don't think that you could have a high-quality STEM school that does not have a high-quality arts program integrated throughout. We're not this that it doesn't matter, because we have found out it really matters to a lot of people if you have the A in the acronym or not. What we're saying is between STEM and STEAM, we don't have a huge amount of difference.
So for services from Patel, we are not going to, school or STEAM school, you're not going to get any more or less services.
The nation is a higher bar. That's false. They're basically going to be judged on the same way, other than the two differences that we've listed in prior slides. We have to look for those particular things, but the rigor behind how you look at each one of the applications is going to remain the same. Yeah. As far as are you a STEAM school or are you a STEM school, it really depends on what your community wants. And if your communities of practitioners need to have A within the STEM, then add it. Again, we're agnostic, but the school should reflect what the community wants, not what OSLN or the Department of Education wants.
Yeah, somebody asked if we would be sending out a copy of the presentation, and we will. We'll send.
Anything about that?
Sure.
Because some people have asked if a school submits, we are specifically asking that you identify whether you are applying for STEM or STEAM, and you need to indicate that specifically in those check boxes on the application. And if something happens where a person is, or a school, is applying for STEM, but let's say they don't have the information for the arts, that does not mean that the committee is going to consider you for STEM. STEM, like David said, STEAM is not more than STEM. You decide what it is you're going to be applying for, and you need to include the evidence to sort that donation.
That's a great clarifying point.
We're going to walk through the application piece by piece and just talk about all the components.
Sure.
Can you see?
Kind of. So
we're not ignoring Heather. She's just had some eye testing.
Right. So we're going to see if she can actually read at this point.
Right. So we want to make sure that school districts that, or schools that apply for STEAM or STEM designation are a school district and a partnership with a school, a college or university, and a business in the area that's going to help them implement your STEM and STEAM vision. So you can be an existing school, you can be a school that doesn't exist that's going to go for designation as a way to start up the school, a chartered public school, it can be a school, so there's a number of different eligible schools.
First application is the assurances. These are basically, we call them the easy ones because they are the check-the-box ones. Are you going to not kids? Yes. Are you going to provide a quality education? Honestly, I'm not trying to discount these, but these are assurances that if you are operating a school, you kind of have to follow these anyways.
The very beginning of the application on the cover sheet, there literally are now check boxes, and you check the box that you agree to these assurances.
One of the notions, the prior one, partnership with the public-private, including the institution of higher ed and business, just to give you a little background on why that was important and still is important. We want to ensure that the school is able to stand the test of time. So we don't want this to be a one-time, I'm a superintendent and I love STEM this year, and next year I'm gone. So your institution of higher education in the game, is the business in the game. It creates a more solid foundation for starting a school.
I have a question that, does an elementary school applying need a connection with a college or university or connection with a high school? I think we would say probably both, but definitely some sort of a connection with a college, university, and we know that's a little tricky. It doesn't have to be this great, they're creating curriculum and pipelines and all of that, but there needs to be some kind of kids need to be, elementary school need to be exposed to institutes of higher ed.
And the question of the connection to the high school, I think, is a great question, because we do have, as all educators here, there is a vast wasteland between elementary school and high school. Here's the thing to do. Create a great elementary school where the kids are having all kinds of great time and learning and doing everything in the STEM, and then have nowhere for them to go at the high school level. So they do have to have some kind of natural pathway to a high-quality education beyond wherever they are, whether it be elementary or high school.
There's a question right now about what are the partnership requirements, and we have a whole section dedicated to partnerships. So my recommendation would be that we wait, get this assurances piece, and then we'll talk about partnerships more in depth in a few minutes.
So in the Institute of Higher Ed connection, does it matter if it's in relation to math and science or science? And so it sounds like you're science and technology and engineering and math. So we'd like it to be obviously a connection with all of those components of STEM, not one or the other necessarily. And I think that's not always possible, and not every connection that you have is going to be about all of the subjects in STEM, but important. Okay.
Schools receive another assurances, commitments of sustained and verifiable fiscal and in-kind support from. We're not looking for every school to get a contribution of $1 million, but we're looking for the partnerships that are real. That can be symbolized through cash, but it could also be symbolized through in-kind support. The truth is, we just want a really firm partnership. We don't somebody, we understand we're grant writers ourselves. It's easy to get the letter of support, but can you get the really true commitment around the partnership? Governing body, which is basically, if you're like a community school, it has to have a sponsor, and the sponsor has to be included. If you are a district school, your district board can function in this way. We had, to be honest, a lot of parochial schools applications. So the governing board is whoever the governing board is. We don't make judgments of quality. We do make judgments of legality.
And if we receive grants from a business to purchase materials, does this count as a business partnership? There's some additional sort of, if the relationship goes beyond them just giving you money or equipment. So we're looking at really in quality, invested partnerships.
Hollywood's one, what about the assurances that you have to do annually?
Yeah, can you hear me okay again? Just want to make sure everything's still working.
Yes.
Okay. So So as part of, there's a checkbox where you say that you will comply with Chapter 3026 and continue within that. And Section 23 of that chapter, there is some annual assurances that every STEM school has to submit. It's just a brief, kind of a checklist. That includes things like we've had a fire inspection, a health and safety inspection, things like that that really have to do with the safe operation of a school of any kind. They're designated, then usually in June of every school year, I send a reminder to all of the designated STEM schools to say, hey, just don't forget about this. It's due 10 days before the first day of school. And so that would come from me. If designated, you'll get an email about that. So that's not something you have to include in the application. That's just something that's kind of rolled up into that complying with Chapter 3326. And so just to clarify that, that's something that will happen after you're designated.
And sure you do it so you don't lose your designation status. We're going to roll through the application now. The first question is about public and private partnerships. You are to describe your public-private partnerships, the stakeholders, what partnerships, who they are, what they're doing, how they're helping your school and your students get access to STEM professionals and STEM opportunities. Do we have it here? Yes, there we go. Okay. So a high response to this would show that there is evidence of a true partnership. And what does that look like, I'm sure is probably going through folks' minds. So I will be honest with you, as a reviewer, we can tell in the writing whether it's just I gave you money, whether there is a true partnership that is described. We can tell reading letters of support generally if it's a form letter versus a detailed letter about the nature of the partnership. So I think sometimes describing who your partners are and what they're providing for the school. I think for this question, I think depth is more important probably than breadth. So the deeper partnerships versus having a whole bunch of partners that are necessarily contributing to the school in a meaningful way.
I like to think about partnerships as the way that schools gain access to all the contextual information that's going on outside of the school building. So the partners help create enrichment opportunities for the students and for the teachers so they can ensure that what's being taught in the classroom is reflective of what's going on in the outside world. And that can happen in a number of ways. We've had recently, a park system work with the teachers in a school throughout the entire year to talk about how what you do in the park connects interdisciplinarily in a number of different places throughout the curriculum. So they're building up the teachers' capacities, and then the students are being built up as a result of this ongoing partnership.
And is there a recommended number of partners? Well, you're required to have a business partner and an Institute of Higher Ed partner at minimum. But again, I think we're more concerned, or the committee is more concerned about having deep partnerships versus a bunch of people on a list that are not necessarily contributing in a meaningful way as they're described to the school.
Another thing is, it's not a partnership if you have from the window company come in once a year and talk to the 7th graders. That's not a partnership. It needs to be a longer relationship, a more impactful connection.
So here are some ways we provide some examples of weak and acceptable and strong types and words of partnerships. Those letters of support are really important. So you may want to start on gathering those now if you want to make sure that you have strong letters. So it has to be the school. You need a business partner and an institute higher ed at a minimum for application. That doesn't mean that you can't have multiple kinds of partners, but those are the minimum requirements for the application. If Career Tech School has multiple and should we apply for each individual location, or can we apply for designation as a district? It's a great question, David or Holly.
Holly, I don't know if you've heard the question, but basically, if a career has multiple locations, should we apply for each individual location, or can we apply for designation as a district? And I'll let Holly respond, but my response would be to do it as a district within a school model. I don't think you need to have 40 applications to cover the 40 different programs.
And that's something to be careful about too. Can you hear me okay, David?
Yes.
That's something to be careful about too. And David, you can probably maybe address this a little bit better, and maybe I can, is to make sure that you're distinguishing between a program and a school. So that's something that you might want to elaborate on a little bit, just to make sure everyone understands that. That question has come up before, but I have a really clean answer to it, other than just to be careful about the difference between a program and a school. So can you talk about that a little bit more?
Certainly, and Holly brings up a great point. So the law is very clear. Career technical institutions can apply for STEM designation. That's fine. What we in the past is some career technical centers have said, we've got a great robotics program, or we've got a good health center, and they've tried to apply that way, but it was a program, it was not a school. This is a school designation. That comes into some problems for career techs. Is their school would be included, and that means they would get separate report cards, they have a separate funding stream, and I know just logistically that causes some heartburn for some career technical institutions. We tell you, yes, you should, no, you shouldn't apply, but it's application and go in with eyes wide open. Are you in a position where you can get a report card? Is that a good thing for the whole CTE? We don't want to, actually, we want to encourage CTEs to apply, but we don't want them to get into a position that is hard to operate.
And that works as specific, separate, individual phone calls
Yes.
for career tech centers.
Yeah.
So we're not going to push it off. It's just a complicated scenario. We want to help you and get there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's something actually that we've been having some discussion about. So let's stay tuned on that. One thing I would say too is I know that some career centers have satellite programs with surrounding districts, and maybe that is the situation that's being described here. And so it depends on how the committee might interpret it. Is if the program that's being offered within a school is how do you label that, as a program or a school? And so that's where it's a little fuzzy. So that I think we probably have some separate conversation on that.
So we just included some examples here of really great partnerships. So Maryville is located in Marysville, Ohio, very close to the Honda plant. And so it's a very logical partnership, but it's also a very, I think, beneficial partnership for both Honda and for the high school. So I know Honda has provided a ton of equipment to the school, because the school is going to also then include in part of their curriculum some of the kind of basic level skills that folks who work at Honda will need to work at Honda. So kids are getting some kind of on-the-job training, and then Honda is going to get a better prepared workforce.
And that goes to Heather's point. It's not just the guy showing up They have the big pieces of equipment, that's a wonderful gift, but if nobody knows how to use them, that's a terrible gift, and they've been able to figure out at Honda and Marysville how to make that a true partnership.
So we just did some other partnerships. We're not going to run through them, but if you want to, we can answer those questions later. So the second question is about your governing board. This is a fairly straightforward question. So who's on your governing board, and more importantly, how are they selected, and how they support your STEM or STEAM school. So it's very important to include both pieces of this, who they are and how they're selected. Some folks leave some out, and then the reviewer left to guess, and then folks don't get scored well on this one because they don't include all the information. It doesn't have to be super long. They can be voted, or they're elected officials, however that works for your school. So we've got high and low responses.
So if you're a public school district and your governing board is elected, you can certainly write our governing board is elected. But it might be helpful to hit home on the parts about how your school board supports the operation of a STEM or a STEAM school, or if you separately have a committee, a group that's invested in supporting the STEM or STEAM development of your school. I think that that's really helpful information in that section of the application.
Question about who's on the governing board for parochial schools. I'm assuming all parochial schools have some kind of a board, and they're obviously probably not elected by the larger community, but they're elected at the specific school site. That should be who you're talking about in this question.
And we have responses last year that said the Archdiocese is
yes.
the governing board, which is true, but there's also, but we have this committee who has this STEM professional, that kind of nurse.
Some more criteria for that question. And then we're going to, question 3 is probably the biggest.
Hold on one second. We have another question about, can you create your selected on expertise if we explain how they were selected? So I think it depends upon the kind of school that you are. So if you're an independent STEM school, then you start your own board. If you are a district school, okay, public school, so you have probably an elected school board. I look first at the elected school board and see what sort of influence they have, because we want to make sure that they're bought into this idea of you applying for STEM designation, and that they're going to help remove barriers if possible. And then look at the large district to see, like, have they done anything else to promote STEM or STEAM within the district? Like we know up in Cleveland Public School, they have a STEM fellow position that they've added. And if none of those things are happening and you want to make sure that you've got some expertise, I think, you can talk about where you have an advisory group.
So I think you're right that there's definitely space for a STEM committee at your school. Question 2 really is looking at your school board and how your governance exactly, how your school, whether that's a public school or a community school or a parochial school, how your school is governed, and those folks support STEM. You talk about a separate STEM committee in this section also. There's in the curriculum, or some point later, to have a curriculum team, you can talk about that there also.
Right.
So we have a question about partners. The healthcare a partner that's a healthcare network with adding the M to the behind STEM to make it STEM squared or STEM plus M. Be beneficial, and I think we're fairly agnostic to that as well. We think that STEM is a fairly broad term that health can fall into. So whether add it or not, that is up to you. There's not a STEM plus M designation. So I think that's probably up to you.
If they were giving you money and they
Yeah.
want the extra M in it,
Yeah.
have at it.
Yeah, I knew that's what he was gonna say. Question 3 is about curriculum, and quite honestly, this is probably where you should spend the bulk of your time writing and thinking about and conceptualizing and getting on paper. And so there are 4 parts to this curriculum. So the curriculum has to be rigorous, diverse, integrated, and project-based. Goal to prepare students for college, workforce, and citizenship, and include specific examples of how the curriculum emphasizes STEM's roles, incorporates scientific inquiry and technological design, includes the arts and humanities, and that's really for all STEM schools, not just for STEAM schools. Emphasizes personalized learning and teamwork skills. So, we'll say that again. We might say it again later.
Would you,
Yes.
since we're part of the review process, I would say any school that's been rejected under the designation, this was the question that really didn't make it. And to emphasize this, just because you have a great STEM program, you have some, you do Saturday STEM something, that does not make you the STEM school. And it is this particular question that we look at to try to differentiate between programmatic and STEM integrated throughout.
Yeah, this is where we, as best that you can, for us to understand what your school culture is like, and so that we understand that STEM is really integrated throughout your entire curriculum, with all of your teachers. All students have access to it, and as David said, just because you do a design challenge does not mean that you're a STEM school. Just because you have a robotics team doesn't make you a STEM school. It really has to be integrated throughout your entire curriculum. All of your teachers have to be on board. And then there are some other pieces here. So this is where we'd like you to talk about whatever design cycle you're using. We'd like you to talk about your habits that you've developed or that your school has developed. This is where we'd like for you to talk. So I think a lot of folks don't hit the personalized learning and teamwork. And this is a really big piece of our STEM schools that are already designated. What are the opportunities for students who need a little bit of extra help? What are the opportunities provided? What are the opportunities provided to them to get that extra help and make sure that they're mastering their subjects in each of their the curriculum? And what are the opportunities provided for students who are moving a little bit faster, perhaps, than their students? How are you enriching their learning? And so that is really important here, and I think this is where a lot of folks kind of also fall off because they don't. You have some way that you potentially provide this, but it doesn't always come out as clearly as it can to help us understand that. So I think that's also just something really to be clear about here is we have been in a lot of schools. Our team has been in a lot of schools. So we can infer a lot of things from your application, but the committee has not probably been in as many schools. So you really want to paint the picture for them of what your school looks like and how you're really fully integrating and using project-based learning and giving opportunities for students to learn about workforce and college and careers. So this is really where you should spend the bulk of your time focusing on and writing to make sure that we can clearly, and again, we know what we see on paper, something is STEM, what we would think of as STEM school and something that's not. And so it's kind of fine line of, we have applications where you've thrown a lot of things, on paper. There might be, yes, you do a design challenge, and yes, you do something in the community, and yes, you do something over here, but they're individual components, and they're sort of one-shot deals that there's no sort of integration with those things. And so it's really important. And sorry, that's talking for a long time.
We have a question from.
Oh, yes. Can you apply humanities, English, social
English, science, social studies. So it's actually a great question. If you've got what we consider a strong STEM curriculum, the teacher is participating, the social studies teacher is, it is not just, STEM's not a class. It's something that they are all engaged in a total whole picture of the student's education.
Because I fully believe that English teachers, Spanish teachers, can teachers exactly can integrate inquiry-based learning into their curriculum. They can incorporate design challenges and habits, and all those things can all be incorporated throughout the curriculum. We've seen it. We know it can happen. We know it. I think that was on. Yeah.
Leader's pretty easy. If the person who is leading this project for you or the school for you doesn't have a STEM background, kill the application, but you're going to have a pretty strong backup component of saying why this person is the right. So it'd be okay to have a great instructional leader and say that they are embracing the STEM component of it. But we just want to know, or the applicants and the STEM committee wants to know, do they care? Are they really vested in this? Or, which we also get, the district said we're going to be a STEM school next year, so I got to do this thing.
And what is, and I don't think we talk about it in here, but we offer an Innovative Leader Institute. It's a year-long cohort training program for school leaders. I know that we've seen on previous applications principals who've been through that program or principals who are going to be going through that program. That's a great thing to have on, I think, in the application. So I'll quickly tell you that the applications for the next cohort will come out in January. We start in May, and again, it's a year-long program.
I think it's shameless.
It is a shameless plug. But I already see some folks who are on there now who are joining us. So, we talked before, you need a curriculum team to tell how the curriculum is going to be developed. It must include these people. If it's a STEAM school, it must also include someone who has that arts integration experience. So, question 6 is sharing best practices. Do you want to talk about that?
I do. There is no purpose for us to be operating a network unless people are willing to share. And we want to shamelessly steal from you. If you're doing a great practice somewhere within the state of Ohio that's advancing kids' education, specifically in STEM, we want to know about it, we want to be able to publicize it, and actually we want to transfer it. So this is an arrangement or an agreement that you will participate within the network. We try to make it simple. It's not an initiation fee or anything like that. It's free to you, but we all want to get you together with other like-minded people who are concerned about STEM education to learn from and vice versa.
This is where I think the hubs come into play.
Yeah.
So the folks want you to share with the folks in your region. We have really great stuff we want you to share with other folks across the state. As I said, we have an annual meeting of all of all of the STEM designated schools to come together and talk to each other and learn from each other. We know that it's great to have other people who think like you be together to bounce ideas off of, to learn from, to share your challenges and your best practices. So we want everybody to be part of that because we know and we've heard that it's beneficial to folks. So question 7 is, this is a newer question this year. Describe how your school has received or will receive any kind of in-kind or financial support from regional education partners and business entities. Essentially, I think this is just an extension of the partnership question. So who is providing you with either money or some kind of in-kind, whether that's equipment or people or connections or space, whatever that looks like.
We never did this one. We never did this on, oh, somebody gave them $100,000 or $500,000. We judged it through that partnership lens. That seems like an above and beyond kind of commitment to somebody.
Yep, I had a question about the leadership cohort. It is the Innovative Leader Institute. I, a.k.a.
I have it on your forehead.
Oh, that would have been really good to have it on my forehead. This question is very, people we kind of look at as crazy or look at it crazy, but
It's Ohio law.
It's Ohio law. What are you going to do if small, tiny chance that your school closes? How are you going to distribute your assets?
A real answer to this is we're going to follow the law.
Yes, we will follow, we'll do whatever that law tells us. You need some commitments and letters of support. So these are great. We're getting a 5-minute warning from Rob, so we're going to move through these. There are some additional considerations that we actually think are pretty important and where you might want to spend another decent of your time talking about and thinking about. So question 9, describe how you will provide opportunities for all students, including those from underserved and underrepresented populations. So just so you know, all of our STEM schools in Ohio are non-selective. So we expect that that will continue and that you're not cherry-picking the best students and bringing them to your STEM school, that every kid in Ohio has an opportunity to attend one of these great, awesome schools. And then question 10, how your school recruits and retains faculty. So I think to the leadership question, it's just really how are you going to go out and find faculty that are able to teach in a STEM school that where teaching and learning is a little bit different. How are you going to find folks who are comfortable in that kind of setting? How are you going to train them? How are you going to support them once they're in the classroom to make sure that they're implementing STEM in the way that we like STEM to be done?
And that gets to the thoughtfulness of the application. You know, there's always going to be 2 people in a school that, let's do a STEM school tomorrow, great. But how do you do the long term? What's the right kind of staffing? Worst they can do is create a great school for kids this year and not be able to just sustain it the second year.
Our steps, we're going to go through these quickly. So OD has a couple of deadlines. By December 20th, you need to submit a letter to Holly, a letter of intent that you're going to be applying for STEM designation.
Letters and overstatement?
Yes. You need to let Holly know to accept your application in March. Then the applications are due to Holly on March 2nd, and that is the cover sheet, the narrative, and letters of commitment. I think this is one, and they need PDF. So we offer, Battelle and the Ohio STEM Learning Network offers a service to anybody who's applying for STEM designation that we will have your application reviewed and provide feedback before it goes to Holly and the folks at ODE. And we think that's important because they 100% of the recommendations that we've made to the STEM committee about designation have been accepted. So we have a chance to read them here. We send them out to principals and teachers across the state to provide some feedback. So we've seen them, we've used some feedback, and then we have an idea of we've been, and we know that we're working on it, it's been reviewed, you're going to get some feedback, and rework on it, and then get it to Holly.
And some of that feedback can be, you're just not ready yet. So
yep.
It's just kind of the process to find out where you are in the game.
So we're going to tell you in a minute when Julie gives me back my And Holly muted right now.
Okay, I just wanted to say I'm getting a lot of emails from folks asking if there is a particular format for the letter of intent. Out of emails, and the answer to that is no. It just needs to let us know what the school, your address, and information from your primary contact person. A few people have even sent me an email with that information. We just want to know who's applying. So that's I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. The other thing is, if I put in a shameless plug quickly, is probably either Friday or Monday we're going to be posting what's called a quality model for STEM and STEAM, which kind of elaborate on some of the things that are being discussed in this webinar. So that's another resource you can use.
Great.
On our STEM webpage.
Yep. So we have a couple questions about the OSLN deadline. So you know by January 15th if you request any technical assistance or want a pre-review. You just need to send us an email by January 15th to osln.org, and that is just a yes, I'm going to want help, period. Who you are is basically what Holly said. And we will need proposals by January 29th if you want it pre-reviewed. And then we take about 2 or 3 weeks to send out, get some feedback, and then give you at least a week or 2 to take a look at the feedback and make any changes to your applications before you submit them to Holly. The model will be posted on Monday.
That Holly was discussing, and the other was kind of a side comment. It seems like this would be hard to put in 20 pages. I think the application is that.
20 pages is the maximum, but that's like you can do that.
Yeah, I know it seems that way, but really you're talking about 5 or 6 questions.
Because a couple of those questions are literally the responses are a paragraph.
Or we will follow the law.
We will.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would recommend that you send it to us, and we can give you some ideas about where to condense and where to make sure you emphasize so that you don't cut out anything that's essential. But we do want to make sure that it gets into 20 pages, because you make sure that the reviewers read your whole pages and don't, fatigue at the end of it and not hear all the good things that you're trying to communicate to them.
I think we'll talk about it a little bit. I think David was right when he said sometimes the recommendation is you need to wait a year, and sometimes folks take that advice and sometimes they don't. And it's not, we're not saying generally that your school is terrible. It's just that there's some, you need to just spend a little more time developing, and that's okay. Our tips and tricks, quickly, we're going to run through these.
Hiring, so we know some folks do things, work as a consultant to do the application. Here's why we have nothing against consultants. Here's why we don't like it. When you read the application, you can tell who's got their heart and soul, who's actually got to operate this school. When people fill out the application, you can always tell when it's somebody else who's going to be doing the work. So to have a kind of a pure, the other thing about some of the consultants is we've seen the same paragraph 27 times.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good flag that you're not really. So as a person who's designed a bunch of schools, it helps to write the application because you have to go back at somebody and say, oh, did we say we were going to do that? So how are we going to do that?
Question about, can we include pictures in the application materials, and the 20 pages include the letter of support? So there's opportunity to include appendices. They're limited to 10 pages. You can include pictures, but your appendix cannot be more than 10 pages total.
But you can include
pictures and narrative.
And then 20-page narrative.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And the 20 pages does not include your letter of support. Letters of support.
Right.
Since we just said it, use someone in the school to write the application. Take a look at the rubric that the reviewers are going to be reviewing your applications from, and take and make sure that you're addressing all of the things and items in that rubric. Yes, please, and these are just tips I know lots of you probably already know, just write it in order, and so we don't have to be hunt around trying to find answers, because if we do, sometimes we don't find things, and then...
Well, if we do, the committee is.
Yeah.
They're looking for it.
And that's actually part of the instructions this year, the first sentence about the narrative.
You respond to each of the following prompts in order.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So there's not a score, a point or a number score for the rubric and for the process. It's a holistic review, so don't expect to see any numbers. Just we've learned from the past. We've talked about it again, that there's not enough, and applications that have not been recommended for designation, that there's not enough evidence that STEM was a holistic, fully integrated approach across the curriculum. So again, that's the sort of, and it goes to the second thing, that this misperception that just doing Project Lead the Way courses or having a makerspace or a design challenge makes you a STEM school is not. Confusing thematic units with authentic inquiry-based learning, and I laugh because I was a grade teacher and I loved thematic units and did lots of them, but looking back now, would not say that they were actually authentic inquiry-based learning. And a formulaic application, as David said, we have seen applications with not just paragraphs, but multiple paragraphs that are in this same application, or different applications, same paragraph, different applications, because somebody else either wrote them or you shared and somebody thought that was a great paragraph, and then it just gets put into everybody's. And we see these things, so we know.
It's bad.
We've seen them some years now.
Yeah. So pitfall, we're going to keep going, that you have lots of activities, like I said, but it's not, STEM not a part of your school culture, and we can see that. If it's not, it's pretty glaring. But again, that's talking about things like habits and having mastery, or having
design process is evident in a bunch of things, the way that kids approach problem solving. The way I like to think about it is, if we stop doing all these activities and you pull the activities out of the school, would STEM still exist in the school? And if the answer is yes, you're in great shape.
That's good.
So that's what I think about.
You could steal that and put it in.
Do you steal that and put it in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so pitfall number 2 is selling yourself short. I know you had another great comment about this earlier.
I think sometimes schools recognize things that you do, or you fail to articulate what you're doing really well. So I think the way to combat that is to get feedback from OLN or from other people to make sure you're representing what you're actually doing. Also, at what you're doing in your school to make sure you're communicating that to people. Even if it's something that you've done for so long, you sort of take for granted and it doesn't seem special anymore. It might be the most innovative thing ever.
And that came up, we have, every year there are schools that get designation with conditions, and the committee will say something like, well, we didn't see this, this, and this, and the applicants will say, well, of course we do all of that, but you can't, you not see it in the application.
This is, again, we've touched on this, a siloed curriculum, and that means doing science over here, and math over here, and English over here, and NARI, should they ever be combined and integrated and mixed and working together. The reality is that's how work world works. Like Jen here at Patel, I do not just stay with the education team and only work in the education and philanthropy team. I contacts and work with folks all across our business.
Wait, don't you do math outside of the hours of 9 and 10 in the morning?
Because we won't.
Oh, wow.
Right. Okay, we just threw a whole lot at you. We have a question that our finalists visited by anyone on the panel. At this point, they are not.
There is no such thing as, just to clarify, there's not a finalist. You're either in, you get it, or you don't, unless they get the designation piece. So, meaning, you get the designation with conditions piece, meaning somebody from OSLN, maybe with the department, comes out and visits.
All right. Questions? Ask Matt. We are available to answer questions anytime. We're at patel.org. That's what that email, not OSLN.org.
Oh, patel.org.
OSLN, that's, I couldn't that fast enough while we were going.
You can ask for technical help by emailing osln@patel.org.
We prompted somebody will answer that.
We won't think about this, but don't you dare start your application until after Christmas. We hope everybody has a great,
Yes.
great holiday.
Yes. We're going to leave a few more questions. You're welcome. Is the DSLN, I think it's January 29th. Does it say 20th somewhere?
Don't we say the 23rd we wanted to get, or the 15th?
The 15th, we want to know if you want support. 29
Is the
is
deadline.
the date to submit to us.
I'm going to look in the application right here.
23.
You hear me?
Yep.
A question, when will schools be designated? And probably, we've talked about the meeting for the committee to be late March, early April. I think that might be what the question is asking. We haven't said
The question is, when does the designation actually happen? And you're saying March, April?
probably early April. It's going to depend on if there are a lot of applications, just to make sure that there's sufficient time to review them, and it will most likely be early April.
SLN submission is January 29th. In the RFP or the application.
And I'll note one last thing, and I hope you will agree with this. If the STEM committee would designate schools that were not open yet, means that I put an application and we're going to start it next year. In the last couple of years, they have shied away from that to not doing it for a variety of reasons, but the notion is that you are open and operating now.
Have a great holiday, or have a current holiday celebrating. Right.
There you go.
Thanks, everyone.